Welcome back to another episode of Excuse My Grandma. It's Kim and my co-host,
Grandma Gail.
Okay, before we get into this week's guest, Grandma, what's new with you?
Well, it's been so terribly hot in the Northeast that I must honestly say I have been watching a tremendous amount of Netflix and Amazon and just staying inside. And this week, I watched The Offer.
Well, you've been talking about it nonstop.
I know, but it's fascinating because The Godfather, it was the 50th anniversary of the making of The Godfather, and I didn't realize when I started watching this. Some of my friends told me you have to put this on. That it was so involved in with the mafia and with different politics of the time, that it was a miracle that they ever got it really made. And it was such an iconic film with such great stars, but the only great star at the time was really Marlon Brando, he was the epitome and still probably is the greatest actor that ever lived. But, it was when Al Pacino was a kid. He was a young guy and they didn't want to have him, and how they had to persuade the people at the Paramount to do it. It's a fascinating production, and it's, done by these men who really were involved in the making of the actual movie. So it's so terrific.
So I had never even seen The Godfather, but you've been talking about this for so much time now that I went and watched it the other night. I love movies, so I was like, how have I never watched it? But I'm also like, it was 3 hours. So then I started The Offer. So
Right.
I'm on episode 4 or something. But I'm a little bored, to be honest.
No, don't get bored, because it's interesting. It's interesting how he did it and how they got the things all working, and how, there was such a dynamic between the studio, and it's so fascinating to see a behind the scenes creation of a masterpiece. I think that's really what the whole thing is.
Yeah, right. The concept is cool.
The concept really is amazing. So that was my week. I mean, I did that. I watched, some other stuff, went out for dinner.
I also watched that Neil Patrick Harris Uncoupled show.
I watched that too. Yes, I watched. It was fun.
Like classic
it was
Darren Star, very Emily in Paris, Sex and the City.
Yeah, instead of being women, it was men. It was,
Yeah.
It's fun. It's mindless watching of a series. It's pleasant, and nobody will get hysterical if they miss a segment of it.
Right.
It really doesn't matter, but it's fun. You know what? We're entertaining ourselves because it's so. I think the heat is finally going to break. It's just been awful. It's been like this all over the world.
I don't even
want to
sit out and tan anymore. I'm over it.
Oh, well, tanning isn't even a conversation. I couldn't even. The other day when I was walking in the city, I thought the pavement was melting.
I know.
It was just really, really
Well, this is
hot.
actually so heinous, but so I went on a date and we walked a little bit after, and I had to be like, I need to get in an Uber, because he put his hand on my shoulder or something, and then I knew he could feel the sweat on myself.
Oh, stop it. Nobody feels
No,
that.
I swear. I was like, oy, oy, oy.
All right. Well, you know what? It was too hot to walk anywhere. It was a pity. It's a pity when it gets like that. And you're better off in the air conditioning.
I guess so. But otherwise, not much is new with me. Just been working. Went on that one date. That was kind of it for dating for me.
All right. You can take a little rest for a
Just a
while.
little
You need a
siesta.
rest for a week or so.
A week.
Take a week off.
Mm-hmm.
Take a week off.
Yeah. The thing with relationships, which we do get into with our guests this week, is I feel like with all of my friends, the discussion is just there needs to be active, we all need to be actively dating. We all feel getting into a relationship is such a priority. Why is that so common?
I think because everybody puts such an emphasis on finding the perfect person, which is so ridiculous in itself. So I think everybody at a certain age, chill out, have a good time with their friends. When the right person comes along, you'll know it. Don't worry about it, and have a good time.
But what about girls who are okay, I need to be going out to bars till 2 a.m.
Well, those girls are not going to find anybody decent in a bar. They really aren't. I mean, if you find an occasional nice guy, it usually is not in a bar situation, because most people are so drunk they don't even know who they've met in a bar by the time the evening's over.
Do you actually ever meet someone that way? Like, I feel like I'm
don't
always
know.
trying to go to bars. I'm like, oh, I have to meet people. And it's like, but do the people I meet at those bars ever actually turn into anything?
No,
Like, I don't know if it ever has. So
I think it's just an activity that you either go in with friends or you go in with somebody and you see how the evening progresses. But I don't think anything really great comes out of those bar scenes.
Yeah,
so
I'm not
you can
sure.
eliminate those. I think the most fun that you're going to have is that you're going to this camp.
Oh, yes.
We have to talk about that. I don't know.
We do have to talk about that. I'm going to sleepaway camp for adults.
And you didn't even like sleepaway camp
That's
for
the issue.
kids.
I just didn't even like camp.
Well, it's going to be fun. I want you to
I want to say first, though, Lindsay Metzelar, who started the podcast We Met at Acme, she came on our podcast probably about a year ago now.
Right.
She's great, and she is organizing this camp.
I think it's terrific. I think it's fun. See, 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds can go have a good time. You'll have color war.
I will say, okay, it's only 2 nights. It's Saturday and Sunday. It's a weekend.
It's still color war. You're still going to end up with a color war. I guarantee you.
Yeah. I think that's part of the itinerary.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Didn't I read it to you in the car?
Oh, yeah. That's right. I forgot.
Yeah. I'm excited. I don't know who's going to be there, but I feel like it'll be fun.
What's the difference? You'll be fun.
It is supposed to sort of be like a singles.
Well, I'm sure it'll be singles, but it doesn't matter. You're not going to couple off. It's just,
it's not Love Island. We don't have to get into a couple.
Think so. I don't think you have to worry about it. I think it's just something fun to do.
Mm-hmm. So this week we talked to Damona Hoffman. She's a professional online dating coach. She also has her own podcast, and we have some really interesting conversations with her, especially looking toward dating trends when it comes to this fall and what the data has found.
Okay, looking forward to hearing her.
All right, you guys, we are joined by Damona Hoffman. She's a professional online dating coach. She's OkCupid's official dating coach. You might have seen her on the Drew Barrymore show before as the resident love expert. She writes for the Washington Post Date Lab, and she also has her podcast, Dates and Mates. Damona, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Damona.
So happy to be here with both of you.
So we start by asking our guests their relationship status and where they're currently living or where they're from.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to ask me my age too.
Wow, you do.
No, we're going to skip it. I was like, how am I going to answer this? I am ageless. My relationship status is married. My husband and I just celebrated 15 years in April. Yeah. And I live in Los Angeles. This is my home, although I seem to keep shooting shows in New York. So
where were you originally from?
I'm from Michigan. I'm a good Midwest girl.
Okay.
And you have kids as well.
Yeah, I have 2 kids. They are 12 and 11. No, I don't know how old my kids are.
You're in trouble.
They're 12 and 8.
Very nice.
And how did you meet your husband?
Oh, of course I met him online, Kim.
I can't believe it. Another one of those online dates.
But Grandma Gail, this was a different age of online dating. So I met him when it was a dating site, and no joke, I had dial-up internet. Kim was 4. And so that's really what got me into dating coaching. I actually was originally a casting director in television, and I used to teach classes in marketing and show actors how to have headshots that would really stand out and tell their story. And then I started online dating at that time, and I was like, oh, this is basically the same thing. A headshot is a dating profile photo, and a first date, it's an audition. So once I applied those techniques that I was using at work towards my dating experience, I ended up meeting my husband, and then people started coming to me for my advice. And so it just started originally as like just a side hustle, fun thing that I did.
So I admire you for seeing where you're going with this and using your expertise in an area that's much needed. That is sure. According to my granddaughter, it's definitely needed because she goes on and off those dating apps all the time. And I don't really love that, but
that's the game though. That's the game, Grandma.
I feel like in this whole episode, the goal is, can Damona get Grandma Gail on team dating app? Because she has so many concerns.
I got Drew Barrymore on team dating app. She was like 2 years ago, very anti dating app. She had been ghosted one time from a dating app, which will not be named, not OkCupid. And she and she's a celebrity. So she was apprehensive about the whole thing. And
Right.
since that time, she's dipped her toe back in the water. She's still looking, but we got another season order, so season 3 starting production. So I still have time to make it happen for her too.
Okay.
Amazing.
All right. So that's great.
So Grandma, why don't you share like your first concern with Damona and see?
Well, my first concern, and of course, Kimberly has said that's nonsense, is worrying about who they really are. These people can put up a false resume on their profile. I mean, how do you really know for sure that this is an honest description of the person? Not look wise. I'm talking about character, age. So many times they say, oh, they're 30 when they're really 20 or they're really 50.
That's never happened to me in my
But
experience.
it does happen because I've had friends who are older, of course, who go on a dating app as well, and because they're single, and they do fib.
Yes, it's true.
That worries me.
I'll tell you what, though, because I sort of thread your generation. So I remember dating in the before times, and I remember dating, and I now shepherd people through dating in the digital dating times. And the reality is people were not themselves back then anyway. And I could tell you some stories that would that would make my grandma very worried if she knew, meeting guys in bars, and we had no information to go on those at that time. So and people were lying, and things were going sideways even back then. What I like about online dating is that you have at least an opportunity to vet somebody. And so you can do a Google search. You can do a background check if you're worried. You can do, we can get into like the nitty gritty of like, you can do a reverse image search and see if that picture comes up associated with another name or with different age or any of that. Now, I don't recommend doing too much research before the date because I still like that old-fashioned magic, meet cute, right?
Yeah.
But this is the thing that I've been trying to get online daters to embrace when they get frustrated with someone not being who they say they are, or not being their correct age. I'm trying to encourage people to block and report, because the dating apps really do take that seriously. And now that once Tinder hit the scene and everything was the barrier for entry was so low. Like when I started online dating, I literally had to go to Kinko's, before it was FedEx Kinko's, to have my photos scanned. It was like the most embarrassing moment of my life. But now it's just like you pick a couple of pictures in Facebook or from your phone and you upload them and you're on, and it's free. And so that great thing about that is it opened up the possibility. But the bad thing about that is that now there's just a little bit more research and vetting that you have to do.
Another thing is you could be on an app for a completely different reason as somebody else. Like I could be looking for a long-term relationship. Someone might be looking for a hookup. Someone might be on there because their friend told them to be on there. How do you know if your reason aligns with someone else's?
You don't until you go out with them, I don't think.
Right. So my program, I have 5 steps, and we can go through them all quickly, but what you're talking about is the screening step. So we start with mindset, getting clear on what do you want? Are you looking for a hookup? Are you looking for a relationship? Because a lot of people don't even do that when they go online. They'll come to me frustrated with dating, and I say, well, are you on the apps? Well, yes, I was on the apps, but I was on for 2 weeks and then I signed off, or I don't really know. I'll know it when I see it. We don't date that way. We get clear on who we are, what we bring to the table in a relationship, and then what we want first. And then we develop a strategy. This is the sourcing part. Like, where am I finding these dates? And even though I work with OkCupid, I met my husband online, I'm bullish on dating apps. I don't think it's the only thing that you should be doing. And when I was online dating, I found that I was meeting more people out and about everywhere, because dating is a set of learned skills. And the more that you do it, the more that you practice, the better you get at it. So I was meeting people everywhere while I was dating online. And then we get to screening. And this is where a lot of people aren't doing the screening in the proper way. So they get exhausted, they get burned out on the dating process, because they're going out with anybody. They're saying, well, what if, maybe I should give them the benefit of the doubt, or they're texting. And Grandma Gail, I know you have feelings about texting.
I don't love the texting either.
They're texting all the way up to the date. They're taking all of the air and all of the magic out of the room. And then they're like, oh, they weren't that charming. We didn't have that much to talk about when we got there in person. So it's like you have to thread the needle between having enough information to say yes and not so much information where there's nothing left to be discovered.
Right. First date is irrelevant. You've texted for the last 3 days and you've got nothing else to say. So, I mean, that's what I keep saying to the audience and especially to Kim. Don't text. You want to go? Yes. More than that, I'll see you out for a drink or I'll see you out for dinner and let's talk then.
So I do totally agree with that, but I do think you need more than one back and forth because as you said, like, how will you know if that person is worth going out with more than the other 50 that you might have matched with this month that seem like on paper, maybe just as compatible? Like if you don't want to get dating burnout by going out with all of them, like how do you differentiate without having a conversation?
All right, take notes, Kim.
No, seriously, I am.
So texting is a part of the dating process now. And when I started doing this 15 years ago, I used to say texting is for information, not conversation. I realized about 10 years ago, people were starting to come to me and were writing into my podcast for advice on how to text. I don't know what to say back. And I started to realize I needed to teach texting as part of the flirting and screening process. So what happens on text is that you develop a false sense of intimacy and an idea of somebody that may not actually exist. And there's something that psychologists call the online disinhibition effect. So this is, I am behind a screen, so I'm going to say things that I would not necessarily say if we were face to face or if you really knew who I was. And what I try to get my clients to do is to back off from that. So you can keep it light and do some screening on over text. But if you get to the point where you're revealing something, if you pause and you say, would I say this to this person now if we met in a bar or if we were meeting face to face? If the answer is no, you have to have like a coy response at the ready. You keep the flirtation and the anticipation going. And that's the thing that I have been teaching people for the last 10 years in texting. So you say, I'll tell you more about that when we get a drink, or, well, I would love to tell you that, but we're not dating yet, or something like that, that adds in anticipation. And then this is really key. And a lot of people are skipping it. But I've always said, I'm a big fan of the phone call. I know people don't like you can't just pick up the phone and call somebody, but like doing a phone call, a video chat, some sort of a screening step before you get to the date will save you a lot of time in the long run. So Kim, I'm ready. I'm ready for, you can
I have
dispute
so many thoughts. Okay. Well, let's go backwards. So with the phone call, if it's before a first date, and let's say we already scheduled the date and then they call you and you're like, there's not that much chemistry, then I'm going to have to say to them, actually, we can't meet in person anymore.
No.
She's saying, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, this is screening. The whole goal of, you're on the dating app to find your person, right? So why are you wasting your time? That's what's causing dating burnout. And then we feel like obligated. Like I just heard this story yesterday. Someone was saying they went to a date and they were having drinks before their table was ready. And then this is the worst. This guy was the worst. The hostess came over and said, "Oh, your table is ready now." And he said, "Oh, you know what? Actually, we don't need the table because I actually already have dinner plans after this." No, he did not have dinner plans after.
Of course not.
He just had figured out in the drinks, he'd figured out it wasn't a match. Now, if they had done a phone call or video chat before they got there, they would have figured that out. And so you also need a phrase at the ready that lets people know. You have to establish your boundaries, establish what you want. And this is all part of practicing, because once you get into the relationship, you're going to also have to find your voice and assert your boundaries, right, Grandma Gail?
I'm of the opinion, though, you have to give somebody a face-to-face. Even though the guy decided it was over at the bar before he even sat at the table, he's basically rude. But I mean, one night is not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's not like you're up for a Nobel Prize and you can't be available a couple of evenings. I think that it's nice to meet somebody in person after you've texted, after you've done these preliminaries, but gives the woman or the man a chance. And if you see at the end of the dinner, no good, there's no chemistry, there's no nothing. I still think it's very hard on a first date to find that out. But if you have some kind of red flags that pop up, don't make a second date, but leave it very pleasant. I always say, leave them laughing. You never know what's going to happen a year from now. You might this person might develop into the most wonderful prince or princess. So leave it open. Don't leave with a bad taste in your mouth.
I agree with that 100%.
Okay, good.
And this is why the energy of the date, you remember most the beginning and the end. And if the date continues past that point and you don't leave them laughing, you might not get that second date when you otherwise would have. So I tell my clients to leave the date feeling like it's ending in the middle, which is also why I tell my clients and my Dates and Mates listeners, do not do dinner on a first date. When you're meeting someone from online dating, they're a stranger. You don't have that bridge of I met through friends or I met through a community or we have things in common. So you have to let it unfold slowly. But the key element when you're on these first dates is you got to keep them short and sweet. And the big difference, I think, Grandma Gail, is that the speed of dating has increased exponentially. So that's why I'm trying to keep people from dating burnout, because if you say yes to everyone and you're going out, I have clients prior to the pandemic that were literally going out 2 dates a night, 4 nights a week. And then they're like, why am I so burned out?
That happened to us during COVID. I thought she was having a nervous breakdown. There were so many good people coming in and out.
Right. But I don't know, did you develop any sort of a screening process at that point? Because you can't sustain that level of.
Yeah, you cannot, it is not sustainable. Also, again, it was like in COVID when no one was doing anything else. So I think it was a little bit of a different situation.
Right.
Not that I don't do that now. But it's a little less. It's a little less. But no, I think that I pretty much said yes to anyone who fit the bill of
well, if they live geographically near
me.
That was Jewish, a big thing. That was a big thing during COVID. You had to be able to commute to get to place easily.
Yeah, but now and I was kind of also living by the belief of, okay, everyone, even if I kind of don't like them first date, gets 2 dates. I don't really do that anymore either. And Grandma Gail thinks everyone should get 2 dates. So I was listening to that advice, which might work for some people.
Doesn't work.
But then you are busy nonstop with people that I don't know, there's nothing really there just to fill the time.
My rule is if you are still curious at the end of the first date, you go on a second date. I actually have a 3-date rule. If you're curious at the end of the second date, you go on the third date. But if they say something that offends you, if you're no longer curious, if you don't feel sparks or something by the end of the third date, then I think it's okay to let it go.
What do you mean by curious?
So I'll just say in the context of my own experience, when I first met my husband, my first thought was, oh, he's such a nice guy. Maybe I could set him up with someone. He's very different from me. I'm super outgoing. He's an introvert. He was dressed really preppy. I'm not. And on paper, I was like, I'm not really sure, but I was so interested in his mind and the way that his mind worked. And I thought he was cute. I mean, my first impression was like, oh, he's cute. I could set him up with someone. But I was like, it seems like there's more here to be revealed. So I'm curious to know more about the way he thinks and what he's about. So I wasn't sure. I wasn't like, oh, this is my husband for sure.
Right.
And even at the end of the second date, I was like, I don't really know. But if you're still saying, I don't really know,
it's worth another.
That's curiosity. If you're like, no, there were certainly people that I went out with. I mean, I don't think I ever reached your level of dating greatness, Kim, but there were certainly people that I went out with that just your gut feeling was just like, this doesn't work. This isn't.
What's the age difference between you and your husband? May I ask?
3 months.
Yeah.
And actually funny story about that. I had it in my mind that I had to date a man who was older and more sophisticated. So I was searching a year to 10 years older. And he almost didn't write to me because I had said I was looking for someone older and we were the same age. But he was like, he was turning, we met when we were so young. He was turning 25 the next month.
Oh, but
So he was like,
that's the time when you meet.
well,
That's-
now I have a lot of clients that are,
Oh.
still looking in their 30s and 40s. But I had done a lot of dating before I met him. So I knew what I was looking for and I was ready for something more serious. And so when he landed in my inbox, I looked at his profile and I was like, oh, where has this guy been? Because he wasn't coming up in any of my searches. It was different then. You had to do the proactive searches. And I'm still a big fan of, like, on OkCupid, you can still search by matching questions. You can still search by keywords within matching questions, because on the swipe apps, it's prioritized for ease of use, right? So it's just like, oh, I just want this to be easy and fun. And like, I'm bored and, I'm sitting in bed just swiping.
Yeah.
But if you are dating mindfully, it's a whole different process. And so he wasn't coming up in any of my searches because I was looking for a sophisticated older man. But then I was actually kind of casually dating somebody else who was 10 years older and was kind of weirded out by that. And when I met Seth, I was like, oh my gosh, he's so much more mature than this older guy. So,
Yeah.
age
Sometimes
just
it's not
didn't-
about age, and it's like maturity level for sure. How much swiping do you think is too much swiping?
It's really just dependent on your level of burnout, but it's not so much the swiping as it is the messaging, I find, and the notifications too, because you get that little dopamine reward every time your phone's
Mine
like,
are off.
you have a match. Yeah, keep it off. Everybody listening, keep your notifications off. I have my clients set a time when they always check, like, to make sure that they're checking every day, because also time is of the essence. And you've probably seen, like, you match with somebody, and if things don't start moving along right away, they get buried in the chat, and you're just like, oh wait, who was this person?
Also, I just want to go back a second. Do you know what that means with the notifications?
No.
Okay, yeah, I had a feeling. Okay. So, like, when you get a text message and it pops up on your phone,
Yes.
like every time you get a text, you're like, oh, I got a text. I have to, like, it gives you a little dopamine rush.
Oh, it gives you a rush.
So,
you
like,
get excited.
You get excited. Like, so if you have, anytime you match with someone and it's popping up on your phone, that does something to you versus like just opening the app and seeing that you have them then, and not just getting them as they come, just like only when you're on the app.
Right. So you don't constantly get that constant charge.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also what happens when you get the notifications throughout your day is you're like, oh, this person is cute, but you're at work. You don't have time to respond. So you forget. And then you get 5 more matches. And then that person that you actually really did want to go out with is way down in the feed, versus when you're looking at them all at once, you can say, oh, I really want to write to this person first.
All right. I'm listening to you. I'm still hooked on the setups because I think this is a very hard thing, because you could swipe a million times and everybody could look appealing, and you could really start this serial dating. And whereas if someone, sets you up, you got to give it a chance.
But
I'm
also
very
that's
big
like,
on that setup.
let's say that happens to you like once every 2
Well, it doesn't
months.
happen that much.
So
I
then what, you're
guess.
just not going to date unless it's what, like, I feel like you have to use all of these positive
Yes,
resources.
but I think my problem is that everybody is looking for the better thing. When do you say it's enough? This is good. I like it. Like you said, found your husband, wasn't love at first sight, because you were thinking about maybe you were going to even set him up with someone else. But after a group of dates, you said, no, there's got to be something that clicked in your brain that you said, this guy maybe could be my number one person. And I worry about that with these dating apps, because there's always somebody that looks very good on the screen. So maybe this guy isn't so good. I'll try another guy. It's like almost like going into your closet and looking at your clothes. Well, maybe not this one tonight. I'll pick that one. It worries me because there's so many choices. Let me put it that way. There's so many choices for you girls. It's almost like a whole flower garden opens up on these apps.
How many metaphors are we going to make?
I don't know.
I love metaphors.
I'm just thinking about it, and it really is. Whereas when we went out in the old and prehistoric days, you had a couple of dates. You either liked him. If you didn't like him after a while, you got rid of him. You went on, but you didn't have the variety that you guys have today, which in many ways is better. but in other ways could be dulling your senses after a while.
It does. I agree with you. And I also see that people are finding love online and people are choosing. By the time my husband proposed, like I have a friend who's was proposed to 9 times, not married. And I was like, I don't know how you get to the point where 9 people are like, yeah, I'm going to marry you. This is my person. And you're like, I don't really know. I'm not sure. Because by the time
That's something.
I mean, she
going.
was a dating coach, so she had
Oh,
something going on.
she knew how to do
But
it.
but by the time my husband proposed, it was so clear to me that this was the life that I wanted and that there was no one else that was going to be this. We had practiced what I tell my listeners, slow love. Practice slow love. I didn't coin the term. Dr. Helen Fisher really did the research on this, but research shows that when you get to know someone over time and you form bonds and memories, and then you also have that sort of hormonal exchange of oxytocin and you feel bonded to them, then you're not even looking at these people that you're swiping on in the same way. And it becomes clear if you've done the mindset work in the beginning and you're really clear on what you're looking for, when you see it, it's abundantly clear.
Okay, very well explained.
Yeah.
Like that, Damona.
I want to go back to something you said before because it piqued my interest of like doing some extra like sleuthing of like the reverse image search and things like that. I've never done that. So smart. Are there anything like other tips like that?
Use it just use it sparingly. Like if you really feel, because sometimes people will write in and say like, I just have this gut feeling, I don't know about this guy, or what, maybe I should give you some of the red flag signs so that you know when you should do additional searching. If you notice that you only get messages from this person at like weird times, like only after 10 o'clock or only like certain times on the weekend, or they can only see you or talk to you at those times, that is certainly a red flag. Or if you look at their profile, like I had a client who, before she came to me, of course, I've hooked her up and now she's in the best relationship of her life. Her words, not mine. But before that point, she was actually hesitant, Grandma Gail, about going online because her last experience had been she matched with somebody and he only had 2 photos. You can't do that like on Hinge or, a lot of the apps you have to, on Hinge, you have to have 6. Yeah. But I like to have a curated number of photos, not all of your photos. It's not your Instagram, but he only had 2, which was not good. And they didn't quite fit together. One was a group shot and the other, it was like kind of far away. So she couldn't really tell what this guy looked like. And then when she went on the date with him, he did not at all look the way that she was expecting. And finally she called him out on it. And she was like, you look kind of different from your profile. And he was like, here's the deal. That's actually my friend's photo. The group shot was me, but the other one was my friend's photo. And I didn't think, people would like me with my photo. So he was just catfishing. Yeah. And he said that no other woman had ever called him out on it. Back to my original point about the blocking and reporting. Mm-hmm. But, she was very discouraged after that point about online dating, but she didn't listen to her gut in that moment that something was wrong. Like before she went to the date, something was wrong. That's when you want to plug in the reverse image search. And it's really easy. You go into Google, you just take the picture, like save it on your phone, save it on your computer. By the way, you can use like all of the apps on your computer. A lot of people don't know this.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. You can pull up Bumble, OkCupid. You can pull them all up on your computer. But I find sometimes it's easier to work with the tools when you're not on your phone. So you just then drop it into Google has like a image button you can click and then drop it in there. And then it will look for any similar photos or the same photo. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that won't come up, but if it does, definitely pay attention because sometimes people will say, oh, well, I looked it up and he said his name was Jim, but it says Bill on this photo. It pulled up a Facebook profile. if you get to that point, stop.
Yeah.
Do not start, do not give the benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm going to talk to Jim about why it says B.
Right.
No, honey, he ain't Jim.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to give you my really hot sleuthing tip.
Okay.
Also to be used sparingly. A lot of times people will search Instagram, Facebook, Google. The real hot take is LinkedIn.
I knew you were going to say that. That's mine too. I tell everyone that.
Good. You got it. Because if they are, people aren't trying to catfish on LinkedIn because they're trying to work. So if
I
they
know,
are,
but it's so interesting, this whole conversation, because I have so many, well, basically women friends who are now single because they're either a widow or divorced, and they go on these apps too. Now, a lot of them, absolutely don't know how to work them because they're coming up with guys that are clearly not who they are on their pictures. Whether they took a picture 30 years ago, maybe with their first girlfriend, all of a sudden they've got it on the page, and then they meet my friends and they don't look the same way, which is, it's very disheartening because dating goes on throughout your life.
So is the question, like, if you're in your 60s or 70s or 80s, like, should you be treating it the same as when you're 20 or 30?
That's a great question. Here are the facts. Women over 60 are the biggest targets for romance scams. So when I'm working with someone over 60, I have them be extra vigilant about looking at profiles and making sure and doing this screening and vetting beforehand. Another great way to screen, particularly if you're over 60, is to read their profile. Read their messages as if they were written to someone else. Like, if you could read it and that could be written to your best friend or your dog or whatever, if it's not specific to you, they're probably cutting and pasting. Like, that's the thing that, they're cutting and pasting messages and they're hedging their bets, and probably not authentic.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's very interesting.
And also, like, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this is generalization, but like my grandparents aren't the best texters in the world.
No,
if my grandma will send me okay. If one of my girlfriends sent me okay, I'd be like, she hates me. Like, what did I do wrong?
Okay. Period.
Yeah. So
period is aggressive, Grandma Gail. They read it as aggressive.
I didn't know that until she said to me that you don't have to do half the things you do or you're doing too little.
I said just send a thumbs up. Like, you don't have to confirm with me, like things like that. But when you're dating, I guess it depends, like if you're both on the same level, but it might be even harder to analyze those text messages, because even with guys I'm dating in their 20s who know I'm going to read into their text messages, like
older people don't.
Yeah. They don't read into it? Or
no, I don't think they read into it. I think they're so happy that somebody came up and matched with them, that's where the trouble is. And that's where Damona has to come and help a lot of the older people who are going on these dating things. There has to be advice for them, because I think a lot of them are really like new fish in the pool. They don't get it. They're really not savvy on how to do it. And there needs to be more concern about that group of people who are going online looking for dates. Not
and they will.
Young people.
They will overshare. Usually my older clients will overshare on text more than my younger clients too. Mm-hmm. My younger clients just keep this banter, like, hey, good morning. That banter goes on too long. And I'm like, okay, you have to meet within a week. Mm-hmm. I find with my older clients, if they are dating someone who's in their immediate area, because again, as they are a target for a lot of romance scams, a lot of times it's like, oh, I met this person and if they have a story that doesn't make sense, like, oh, they live in Miami, but they're like abroad right now in Czechoslovakia. Like, what? And then all of a sudden something catastrophic happens. I lost my passport. I'm stuck out of the country. I need my business. My credit cards got locked because I had fraud, whatever. Can you just wire me money? And there's no reason for you to ever wire anyone money, send anyone a, like a debit card, none of that.
Yeah.
That's
good advice out there. Everybody better be listening who's over 60 and single.
Another thing about texting, I saw you posted earlier about like emojis and how to kind of build tension and flirtation using emojis. I don't really like when guys or anyone uses emojis unless it's like a smirk But what are your thoughts?
I think they're mood modifiers. So they're like salt. You use them sparingly. A little enhances the flavor, too much, and it's overpowering.
Right.
So I use it kind of in place of punctuation, because you can't read the text with the intention. You can't know the intention sometimes behind what they're saying. I liked when you had Nick Bile on, and he was saying people read text with the emotion that they're in, not the emotion that you sent it. I thought that was
He was
genius.
Yeah.
Genius advice.
very astute.
Right? But a lot of people will just they'll text without thinking. And again, going back to this online disinhibition effect. So what I'm trying to get people to do is text a little bit more mindfully. And if it's not clear the intention that you're sending, punctuate it with an emoji. I'm also a big fan of GIFs and memes, because I think it, especially in that initial kind of flirting phase, I think humor goes a long way.
Yeah, I never do that. I have to do that more, I think.
Oh gosh.
People love it. People love it. And it gives you like cultural reference points. It
Right.
also gives your sense of humor. People will always tell me that
I
they're
mean, I think
looking
you should
for
send
sense
a
of humor.
brisket image. A roast image on your first date. Send out a brisket. See
And
how
say
many
what,
guys, see how many guys respond that you make a good brisket.
I don't know. Like,
Well, you
grandma
gotta
makes
learn.
You say like, can you make a good brisket,
You make
guy?
That's good.
gender roles swapped. Exactly.
Oh, I'm all about that. You know, I'm
Mhm.
all about talking about gender roles.
So I want to talk about OkCupid's fall 2022 dating trend predictions. You have all the data. What do you see coming up?
Okay, well, first of all, you know, cuffing season is coming. Grandma
Mhm.
Gail, do you know what cuffing
What's
season
cuffing
is?
season? We've gone over this.
I don't think I know what it is. I forgot.
It's like when it gets colder and everyone wants to couple up.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah, well, that's true.
Mhm.
So the official kickoff for cuffing season, according to our data experts at OkCupid, Sunday, November 6th, because we always see the biggest spikes between Halloween and Thanksgiving.
Right.
And then after that, we see it continues to build, and you know, in peak dating season is January. So this is when people start getting curious about, ooh, I would like to match up and have somebody to cuddle with and cozy up with in the winter. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. So make sure you got your profiles ready before before you get to November 6th. What we're seeing, first of all, it sounds like, Kim, you were going on in-person dates like for a while, but a lot of people have tended towards the virtual dates with COVID.
Okay.
So we're
Still.
seeing that we're seeing that IRL dates are back.
Okay.
And now 8 in 10 people on OkCupid are like, okay, I'm done with this virtual dating. Now, my hope as a dating coach is that people still keep the screening step, the virtual dating screening step, but that should just be short, like 15 minutes, like just check them out, make sure, you know, they're cute.
Yep.
And that you can keep on a conversation. So that has been a big change over the year over year.
Mhm.
The other thing that's really interesting is that there's a lot of talk about mental health. And I think that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Grandma Gail, because I think, you know,
A lot of that happened because of COVID. You know,
a lot of that happened. That's true.
That's
true.
And I think our political environment around us, the noise around us, has become so upsetting to many people that they take it into their personal lives and their dating. And
But people weren't talking about it in dating in previous generations.
No, they
And
weren't.
now they are.
Right. It was a very, I must say, that's the one thing I find upsetting. I think that, you know, you should be dating because you like the person. Stop worrying whether he's a Democrat,
But the
Republican,
person's
independent.
values.
Yeah, but
matter.
it matters, but you don't have to have the same political persuasion as seen by many to be a good couple. You can, as long as you respect your partner's differences and make a good relationship together, it shouldn't matter whether I'm a conservative and your grandfather's a liberal. Or what, it really doesn't matter. I mean, listen, there are arguments naturally about it, but it's supposed to be within a good spirit. When it becomes hateful, as we've seen in recent years, that's no good. But that's no good on any level, correct, Damona? I mean, you don't want to have,
It's true.
it's really a whole environment. I think it's a change in thinking.
It is.
We have to get over. We have to be a little kinder to
I
each
agree
other.
with you, but I also see that the landscape right now is extremely polarized. And what people are tending to do is they look at political beliefs as a proxy for all of the other values, like Kim was saying. And while that may or may not be true, the numbers show, if you look at if you look at couples that are different sides of political spectrum, that number is decreasing sharply. And when we look at Republican with Democrat, that's only 4%
Wow.
of
Really,
new
I think
couples today.
That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
it's very polar. But what we found at OkCupid the last election was that the biggest divide was between voters and non-voters. So we have a voter badge because
Oh.
people are like, how can you not care? Like you have to
Not care.
not having an opinion was almost worse than having an opinion that was different than yours.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
I guess
mean,
I'm making an assumption that people who don't vote don't have an opinion. So
I think they
so
have.
forgive me.
They decided not to vote because that was their opinion.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't getting them any dates on OkCupid.
No, it's very interesting, but that is part, you see, I think my whole theory and very much even when you see it on college campuses today in lectures, I think people have to respect differences of opinion. And once you become intolerant of somebody else's opinion, it's no longer a good society.
100%. But also, like, I do wonder if you're looking for your partner that you're going to spend every day with, that you're going to start a family with, whatever, like, it's probably smart to be aligned.
Opposites attract.
I think on a values basis, it has to be similar. But again, I don't think necessarily that all of someone's values can be told just by the political party that they're affiliated with.
Yeah, of course.
But I think this also goes back to this online disinhibition effect and people being so polarized online and sharing their opinions that in a one-way conversation. This is also the big change with texting. Texting is a one-way conversation. It's not a dialogue. Right. And so people aren't having that dialogue, Grandma Gail, that really bridges the differences, right? And so we just are like, this is my opinion. This is my opinion. This is what it is. And so that's how we're used to communicating. And that's why I think we're getting pushed further apart.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. I want to end the episode with a game we play with all of our guests, Grandma Gail's old-fashioned dating quiz. So we'll go through some hypotheticals and then deem whether Damona is more of an old-fashioned dater.
I know.
I'm so curious about this. I don't know where we're going to end up. So let's go.
Okay. First one is, would you rather receive a call or a text if it's just to say hi?
Text.
Sleep with someone on the first date?
No.
Dating apps or setups?
Dating apps.
Move in together before getting engaged or wait until you're engaged or married to move in?
I mean, I did it, so I'd have to say moving in before you're engaged.
Who should pay for the date? Should it be one person in a couple, or should you guys alternate or split?
This is a much more complicated question right now, but this is the one I like for the guy to pay, but a lot of people are going Dutch. And next time I come back, we can talk more about that.
Yeah. More of a modern dater.
Yes, more of a modern dater. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm getting to believe that everybody should put the credit card in the center and just let them go.
Russian roulette.
Roulette, just pick out whoever the card out. It's so stressful. So stressful. You spend the whole night worrying about whether who's going to pay.
Damona, thank you so much for joining us. Tell our listeners how they can follow you and anything else they need to know.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I am still doing the Dates and Mates podcast every Tuesday. You can listen wherever you're listening to, excuse my grammar right now. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I'm trying on the TikTok, y'all. I'm really trying. All of them, I'm at Damona Hoffman, DamonaHoffman. And I also have like a free little goodie for anyone that wants to dip their toe in the online dating waters, but doesn't know how to write about themselves or how to pick the right photos. I have a free profile starter kit on my website at damonahoffman.com or at datesandmates.com.
Okay, hope you guys liked the episode with Damona Hoffman.
Better watch us on TikTok, guys. We want millions of followers. Come on.
That's Excuse My Grandma on Instagram and on TikTok. And send our podcast around. We want more listeners as well. And we'll see you next week.